This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning, folks on the Treasure Coast and those beyond who might be able to hear me on these newfangled technological devices, the internet and Facebook. This is another edition of Ask a Lawyer. It turns out, if my notes are correct, it's my 68th show, at least live one. So we're going to try to make it interesting. I had planned to discuss this morning sexual orientation under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, move forward to revisiting some issues which we didn't cover with regard to needing parenting plan modifications when those issues arise, and also a sort of supplemental on defamation. But the Spirit moved me as I was driving into the radio station this morning. So if we get to one of those topics, that's wonderful. But I'm going to depart from it. And I have a feeling there may be some members listening, perhaps my family or some close friends who may not be too thrilled that I'm going to address this topic. Notice the pun on words.
Oh, yes, Stuart.
Ha ha.
That's it.
Okay. And why am I going to address this as yet unnamed topic? Because it's not just relevant to me, and it's not just relevant to tens of thousands of other Americans and even more across the world. But I have since learned that legal issues are involved. I've learned it the hard way. I've also learned that school issues are involved. Now, I haven't learned that the hard way because I'm no longer in school. But just as part of my normal legal education, I've learned that we have issues that pertain to school and to insurance law. And so I'm going to talk about something personal. I do that because I've already outed myself on Facebook. So this is no big deal to me.
Oh, watch your posts, Stuart. Isn't that what you always
We
preach?
better watch somebody else's posts from this radio station, let me tell you. But we won't go there. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about eating disorders. It may surprise you. It should surprise you. I have an eating disorder. It is not one of the eating disorders I have a feeling you've ever heard of. It is not one of the commonly known eating disorders. In fact, it's an eating disorder that was given a name as a recognized eating disorder only in 2013. Now, I've suffered it from 1961. Only in 2013 was it recognized as something real that existed, put into the DSM-5. And before that, about 10 years earlier, they had discovered it. They gave it a different name. But I was told when I learned about it that they were only beginning to learn how to treat kids, and an adult like me who had suffered for 40 years, they had no idea what to do with me. So once again, things were hopeless. Only in the last few months have I discovered that, guess what? Adults are being treated now. So I am actually, and have been for the last month and a half, in an eating disorder program where I travel Monday through Friday for a part of every day to Palm Beach, in a real pain in the neck, to go to a center for 3.5 hours a day or so, and to work on this. And it's no great fun, and it is not easy. But why am I bringing it up? I'm bringing it up because I've had insurance problems. You may all recall that I have twice addressed the issue on this show of insurance companies practicing medicine. The very first time over a year ago really had to do with my son being denied some coverage and me having to fight to get them to change their mind, successfully, I may add. But this time, about a month ago, I had to go to war for myself. And the war is repeating every week as my insurance company is extending approval for treatment by 5-6 days at a time. In the end, there's going to be a lawsuit. Don't tell anybody.
Do you know any good lawyers?
Well, I may need to go to a class action lawyer for this one because there have been 2 recent eating disorder class actions in other states, not necessarily with regard to my eating disorder, where the accusations have essentially been that the insurance companies have been practicing medicine and that the people who review requests for coverage are not familiar with the things that they're reviewing requests for coverage on.
So there actually is a class action law firm?
There are lots of class action law firms.
Really? Okay.
Lots of law firms that specialize in class actions because they are so paperwork complicated and intensive.
I'll bet. Yeah, sure.
I mean, be honest, as a solo practitioner, I can't handle a class action lawsuit. So you go to somebody who can. But there have been 2 recently, and the insurance companies lost both of them. One insurance company settled for like $80 million to be given to the various people that were part of the class action. And that's because what we find is, and I'll give you an example. In my case, my insurance was initially denied. So the center that I was going to and had assumed I had coverage filed their own appeal. And then when that was denied, I filed an appeal. And I demanded copies of all the documents for all people who had any involvement in reviewing my appeals and any involvement in making the determination as to coverage. And I found that 2 psychologists had reviewed the initial appeal and my appeal. And guess what I discovered? Neither of them had any experience in eating disorders. So how are they making coverage decisions?
And they're psychologists.
Right.
Not MDs, but psychologists.
Yes, these were psychologists. So, I continue to believe there is something wrong, something rotten in the state of Denmark. It happens all the time. A doctor prescribes a medicine, denied. A doctor wants to do a procedure, denied. A lot of times with the insurance company, it's a game. Deny, deny, deny. A lot of people will fall by the wayside. Some will fight, but the ones that fall by the wayside, we save money. Well, let me tell you, they picked on the wrong person here. Because my initial letter to them was 18 pages long. On my law firm letterhead.
I'm not surprised.
And I now have an appeal pending on my first issue in Washington, D.C. It's called an external appeal. When the insurance company denies an appeal, you go to another appeal level, which is an independent physician not paid by the insurance company. The problem with that is even those physicians know that their contract won't be renewed if they give too much coverage decisions. So I think there's some vested interest there as well. If that doesn't work, you have the right to what's called an external appeal, and we can go, anybody's interested, call my office, talk to Cheryl, 781-8003, or call me here at 340-1590, and I can try to talk about it a little bit more detail. But the external appeal is handled by nobody associated with the insurance company whatsoever, and nobody who is beholden to the insurance company. And if they make a determination as to coverage, the insurance company is obligated by law to follow it. So that's where my first issue is. Ultimately, we reapplied and they gave coverage, and they've been giving me 5 or 6 days at a time. I think it's because they know I have an appeal pending on the first issue. But we'll see what happens. Anyway.
So basically you're out of pocket.
No. Right now I have coverage.
Okay, gotcha.
Because after I filed all these appeals and gave them all the additional reasons why they were wrong, all of a sudden they told the center I was going to, which it's called the Center for Discovery in North Palm Beach. Handles all different types of eating disorders, and also, beyond that, other mental health issues. And they have what's called intensive outpatient, which is what I'm doing, which is every day, Monday through Friday. They have partial hospitalization, and they have residential for those who need it. So, and most eating disorder centers have those 3 ranges of care as well. But all of a sudden the insurance company told the center, well, with all this new information, resubmit as if it's a brand new application. They didn't want to grant my appeal, but resubmit it. So the center did that, and all of a sudden I'm giving coverage. But it has to be renewed like every week. So while other insurance companies give people 30 days and then they review it at 30 days, while I've learned that some people are in these eating programs for 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, I get reviewed every week. It's absurd. By the way, my insurance is Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, Florida Blue, and I have heard from many, many, many doctors that they are the most horrific to deal with in terms of coverage decisions. I'm surprised because they're so big and well known, but that is what I'm being told by a lot of doctors who I discuss this with. And they, I'm not surprised. And they tell me their war stories about other patients and issues that they've had. So let me briefly, because this is not really about me, let me briefly tell you about my eating disorder, because it's not one that you've heard of. It's called ARFID. Now, those are acronym letters. It means Avoidant Restrictive Food Intake Disorder. Now, when it was first discovered about 15 years ago, they called it selective eating disorder. And they've learned more about it in the last decade. They changed the name when it went into DSM-5. So it's now ARFID. What does that mean generally? It means I'm afraid of foods. I'm afraid of anything I'm not familiar with. I thought for the longest time that I was the only one on the planet that had this crazy problem that I've grown up with, that has affected all aspects of my life. I didn't go to sleepaway camp, because how am I going to deal with the food? I didn't go to sleepovers. How was I going to deal with the food? I have avoided professional luncheons and dinners. I've even had problems dating. Food is everywhere. And if you don't know what is going to be placed in front of you, and you are afraid of most foods except maybe 15 or 20 that you're comfortable with, which is a signal of ARFID, the idea of any activity that relates to food is terrorizing. Now, that sounds crazy, to use a layman's language. And to use a layman's language, it is. Because I may not have understood this as a kid, being shuttled from therapist to therapist to therapist, with all sorts of ideas, some of them very damaging, because they had no idea what this was, which is why I thought I was the only one in the world who had it, and it would never be solved. But what I have learned is a lot of the things that I thought were peculiar to me are classic eating disorder symptoms, and especially classic to my eating disorder, which is different. One of the biggest differences, or two of the biggest differences, between ARFID and most other eating disorders, which is why it's so not understood, in addition to it being new or newly discovered, is most eating disorders have something to do with body image. I don't want to get fat. I'm afraid that this food has too many calories. It's a body image issue largely, and that leads to that person's emotional reaction to food and restriction of food and fear of food.
So is that why the psychologist is involved?
Yes, that's why it's a mental health diagnosis.
Gotcha. Okay, now I was trying to figure why in the world. Okay.
Now, in ARFID has nothing at all to do with body image. There are people with ARFID who are underweight. There are people with ARFID like me who are obese because of what I eat. And people with ARFID don't try to solve it because they want to look better. People with ARFID are trying to solve it because they're afraid of food, and it has affected their lives. So that's one of the major differences between ARFID and other eating disorders. Another major difference is the fear factor. The fear factor in other eating disorders has a clearly defined basis usually that has to do, again, with body image. And so eating disorder therapists have for decades known how to deal with those things. They have protocols. With ARFID, every person with ARFID is dramatically different. There are some classics. For example, people with ARFID tend to eat high carbohydrate, high fat, bland foods. My diet, hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza.
Pastas and
No.
stuff like that?
No. I don't eat pasta, but a lot of them will. Candy, sugar, high sugar, content foods. One would wonder why I look the way I look, and why I wear an insulin pump. That's the damage it's caused. And the difference in fears with ARFID is different patients with ARFID are afraid of different things. One person might love French fries. Another person, French fries are terrorizing. Makes no sense.
Wow.
Your face is scrunched up in like disbelief.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
And I understand. Okay, I understand that reaction. Because an eating disorder is not a logical thing. It is psychological. So as I was saying, long after I was a kid, maybe as an adolescent, certainly as an adult, and as recently as 3 months ago, and today, I understand that my eating disorder is ridiculous. It makes no sense. Intellectually, I'm a smart guy. I understand that all these various types of foods, they're not going to kill me. I'm probably not even going to choke on them, which is often a fear with ARFID. Another is sensory issues. Look, texture, smell. But I know that it's not going to be damaging to me. I'm going to be able to get through it. And who knows? There are probably a lot of things out there I've avoided that I would love. And I had a surprise just last night. And that's really what makes treatment so fascinating. But some people with ARFID won't eat any fruits. I'll eat some fruits. Some people with ARFID won't eat any vegetables. I don't eat any vegetables.
Really? Wow.
Oh, it's probably been 40 years since I've had a vegetable, except in treatment.
What about salads?
Oh no, I don't know how to eat a salad.
Really?
There are too many things in salad that scare the heck out of me.
Wow. Okay.
Okay? Is it logical? You talk to me as an intelligent human being? No, it is not logical. It is ridiculous. It is absurd. Matter of fact, I say that sometimes to the dietitian I work with at the center and to the therapist that I'm assigned to. I know it. It is absolutely absurd. And in part, that's one of the reasons I'm so frustrated, because I assume I should be able to talk rationally to myself and say, just sit down and eat that dang thing. But it doesn't work that way.
So when you were a kid, were you a picky eater when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah, and there's a difference between picky and ARFID. Picky is normal. Most kids go through picky eating stages.
Okay.
So when it first happened to me, my mother says at about age 1, when I was transitioning from, foods to more solid foods, which is also a standard ARFID issue. Something happened. Now, the operating assumption from way back when is I choked on something and became fearful now of anything I wasn't familiar with.
Oh, okay.
So what did the pediatrician in 1961 tell my mother? Starve him. When he's hungry enough, he'll eat.
Okay.
Wrong diagnosis right now, let me tell you.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
So my mother followed the doctor's advice. No, don't blame her. And sure enough, when I was starving, I actually ate some chicken. My mother thought, success. But as soon as I wasn't starving anymore, I refused it all again. So we go from therapist to therapist to therapist. One bought me toys every time I went to see him. It was bribery. You can Google on YouTube. Bribery doesn't work with ARFID. Threats don't work. One therapist said, give him 6 pieces of whatever you and your family are eating that night and make him sit at the table until he eats it. And if he doesn't eat it, then let him go to sleep hungry. I would sit at the table all night. Threats don't work. None of the things that my parents were told to try, in good faith, by people trying to help, nobody trying to hurt, were not the right things to do. Because A, they didn't understand eating disorders generally, and B, they certainly didn't understand that what I had was an eating disorder, because it wasn't even known until early in the 21st century. So as a result, my situation persisted and persisted and persisted. It became worse, worse, and worse. I got heavier and heavier. I got more medical conditions. And socially and professionally, I've probably avoided interactions which might have made differences in my life. Who knows, folks? Maybe today, instead of being your friendly neighborhood lawyer, I might be your judge. I don't know.
I was just going to say
because I didn't go to luncheons. I didn't go to dinners. I didn't make those connections because I was concerned about what I was going to have to eat. And I didn't want to keep saying to people, I'm not hungry. And then you don't eat any course, except when dessert comes. And then when you're eating it because you're hungry, people are looking at you like, I thought you weren't hungry. The absurdity becomes self-obvious. Or I'm not hungry, but boy, do I gobble down those rolls on the table. Makes no sense.
all starch.
Right. So I've learned that a lot of things that I thought were peculiar to me, a lot of people have, and a lot of them are actually peculiar to the eating disorder itself. Now, they have a thing, and this is not just with ARFID, it's called an eating disorder voice, something I've learned in treatment. The eating disorder voice is the little thing inside of you that yells, danger, 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 establishes the fight or flight response, starts sending all sorts of chemicals to the brain, and you won't try that thing no matter if life on earth depended upon it. You may tell yourself, I want to, but you can't.
So if I made you a pot of spaghetti,
There's not a chance in heck I would eat it.
you wouldn't eat it.
No.
Wow.
Hopefully when I'm done, I will. So now let's go for an example before I start talking about the legal issues, because that's really why I'm talking about this. I've experienced things, I've discovered things that I think might be relevant to people, either your kids, your grandkids, or people friends, neighbors that you know about. And there are legal issues that pertain to school and that pertain to insurance. And that is really why I'm further outing myself. Now, look, I'll be honest, there's another reason. It's a secondary reason. One of the things I've tried to do on this show is present myself as a regular, ordinary person, not some stuffed shirt lawyer, that, you don't really want to call and talk to. I'm trying to be real. And this is probably as real as I can get, telling you all something personal that you don't need to know. But I'm doing it because I now know others can benefit from it. I never started a friggin' live video on Facebook.
Oops.
They're all going to be very
We'll
upset
have it
with
on
me.
YouTube, though.
Yeah, we'll have it on YouTube. All right, for anybody who's going to join on Facebook, unfortunately, I never started the live video. It is 10:35. They may have abandoned me. But if you do join, it will be on YouTube in a couple days when it gets posted. I was so enthralled by the topic that I forgot to hit start video. Who knows who will join in. If I see people join in, I'll sort of mention it quickly. But oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. But that is, hey, that's live radio, live TV. Things go wrong, and that's the way they are. All right, so, I was saying that there are different things that, impact the different eating disorders. When I discovered that adults were finally being treated for mine, I contacted the nearest center, which was in North Palm Beach. And they ran my insurance and said, yes, you have coverage for this. And I went there over a course of 2 weeks or 7 days. And wow, those 7 days were amazing. I ate, for the first time in my life, a grilled cheese sandwich. Now, I picked the cheese that I was comfortable with, provolone or mozzarella, because I have them on pizza all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how they got me to try a grilled cheese sandwich. I said, okay, look, you eat toast. You like this cheese when it's melted. Let's combine it. One of the problems with ARFID is you may eat certain things, but when they're presented in a different format, you're still afraid of them.
Wow. Okay.
So it was not easy for me the first time to sit down and eat that grilled cheese sandwich. But guess what? When I managed to take a few bites and I realized there's nothing wrong with the taste. In fact, I like mozzarella, I like provolone. Tastes good. So guess what? I accomplished very early my first new food. It may not be the greatest, healthiest food, but it's a new food. And we do have a call. We have John on line 1 from Port St. Lucie. Hello, John. How can I help you?
Hi, how's my favorite lawyer doing?
Hey, he's doing all right. He's doing okay.
Good.
Getting better.
You talked about my second favorite subject.
Which is?
Food.
Food. Something none of us can avoid.
Am I losing you again?
No, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. What I wanted to tell you is I've always had a problem of overeating.
Okay.
Been heavy almost all my life. I've been slim maybe 3-4 times in all my years. Came from an Italian mother.
Yeah.
And food was love,
Right. Well, Italian and Jewish mothers are very similar in that regard.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing is my brother, well read, and he explained that most things that are oral would come through our mouth go back to our infancy, with the breastfeeding, the candy. You hurt yourself, you get a piece of candy. Everything.
That's right. In some ways, that is very true.
Satisfaction. It's oral. What do you say? Oral regression. I think he termed it. But anyway, I wanted to tell you that I've been in Florida 30 years. From Boston, and I've had 2 surgeries in my lifetime, both here in Florida, and both of them failed. Both were botched.
Really?
I had open heart surgery in 2000, double bypass. 3 weeks later, the arteries collapsed, and I had a heart attack. I went about 6 years ago. I went to a seminar for lap band surgery.
Oh yes, I thought about that seriously. They wouldn't do it on me.
Let me tell you what happened. I had options, but I chose lap band. It seemed the safest at least.
My thoughts
But,
exactly.
yeah, but I'll tell you what happened. When they were trying to snake the band around my stomach, they tore a hole in the stomach
Oh,
wall.
goodness gosh.
Because they have to grab the stomach and push it out of the way to bring the band around. So they sewed it up and sent me home. And I went back, I think, a week later for a follow-up. And I said to the doctor, what happened? And he told me what happened. And he said, there have been studies that obese people have very thin stomach walls because they eat mostly carbohydrates and not protein.
Okay, that makes sense.
Excuse me. So I said to him, well, if you know that, why don't you put obese people on a high-protein diet for 6 months, however long it takes, before you do the surgery?
Right.
And his answer was, well, the studies are inconclusive. Isn't that a wonderful answer?
Well, that I guess you'd already had the surgery, but if I'd heard something like that beforehand,
That was
I would have gone to a different doctor. Yeah, that's just a doctor who's not familiar with what he should be familiar with, or doesn't care enough about it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think Greg does something with the volume. He doesn't want me calling anymore.
Yeah, it's fine with me. Who cares what Greg says? He's only the station manager.
Yeah.
Only owns the station. Doesn't matter.
Besides, I was told you didn't have a heart.
Who told you that? My ex?
Actually, it was. as a matter
My
of
ex
fact. Oh.
would probably say something similar.
No, actually, let me tell you something. I was married 20 years, and I've been single 38, and we're still best friends.
Well, that's really good. That is true. That goes to another topic I was going to discuss today, and we'll get to. That's really good because I'll tell you, on Facebook at least, I'm still friends with my very first wife and my first girlfriend, and I take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah. Well, we just lost communication, and we grew apart. We didn't part kicking and screaming. It was a sad affair, not a there was no animosity there.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when we went before, I guess, a lawyer for she said, are you sure you two want a divorce? She said, I've never seen a happier couple.
Anyway, so is there? The food issues are definitely interesting, and I can relate. Is there anything particular I can answer for you?
It can be brutal,
It can be brutal. And
But as long if you can stay healthy and be comfortable, I guess, with yourself somewhat. Most people would never guess my weight,
right.
because the way I carry, the way I'm shaped,
But we all know our own weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely, we do. Absolutely. I was thinking that when you were talking about, your problem, what you've had to deal with,
Well, I do
We all have
appreciate the call. We do have somebody else standing following you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for listening.
I
Talk
appreciate
to you
it.
next Friday.
Take care. Bye-bye. We have Eddie from Fort Pierce. Eddie, you there?
Yeah.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. This is not meant to be a comical call. It's very serious to me. I'm suffering from, I don't think they've identified it with an acronym yet, but it would be called probably dingleberryism, or somebody spitting in your food when you're eating out.
Oh, that's recognized. People, and
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, people spitting in your food on your way out, it's a health violation. And, if you can prove it, I'd certainly complain to the, Board of Health. And if not, I'd certainly be complaining to a manager. Unfortunately, it does happen, and it's very unsanitary.
Yeah, I would say that to be the least. I mean, it really pulls me out of that. I'm generally very afraid with people having attitudes, and all they've got to do is do that. Nobody knows, and you don't even know, but it's still.
That's right.
Well, there, and it's something that makes me think about things I don't need to be thinking about.
And if that anxiety were to lead you to avoid eating out entirely or virtually entirely, or other types of behaviors, you would be classified as having an eating disorder.
I'll be damned. Well, I didn't know it was that. I didn't think they were going to blame it on me, but I guess that's the way it is. Anyway, thanks for your time, and people need to think about that, because that could be the new big thing coming around the corner.
It could be. It's very unhealthy
out there on the road.
Very unhealthy, very disgusting. Thank you for calling.
Wow.
Well, and here, that's the point, really. That sounds like just a disgusting thing that somebody else might do. But if that act impacts him in such a way that it now changes his eating habits, it means he's now fearful of going out. That's fearful of an aversive consequence.
Well, and with just watching television news and seeing the potential food workers with the Hep A in Martin County, I mean, all of a sudden, whoa, that's...
So, with 15 minutes left, let me move to the key thing, which is why I brought this up. Haven't said everything I wanted to say, but that's okay. Let's talk about the legal issues. First of all, if you have a kid who has an eating disorder or some other thing that is a little bit more extreme than just mere pickiness, then he or she has rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act and a couple other state statutes to have those problems respected and for there to be alternatives available so that child is capable of eating. So, for example, if it had existed back when I was a kid, the standard thing if you forget your lunch, at least back then, I don't know about now, is peanut butter and jelly or an American cheese sandwich. I could not eat either. So if I forgot my lunch, I was going to starve because I couldn't accept either of the two alternatives.
So what was your lunch?
Nothing.
No, but I mean, if you were bringing your lunch, what would it be?
Well, if I forgot it, what would I be? Very typically, it was a cream cheese sandwich, it was a butter sandwich, it was a cream cheese and jelly sandwich.
But you couldn't have peanut butter.
No, peanut butter still strikes fear in my heart.
Wow.
I've never had peanut butter, so how can I be afraid of it? There's the eating disorder issue, folks. It is irrational, it is illogical, but there is something psychological that makes it a fear food, which is why you have to work on it, usually in the context of an eating disorder program. And at the very end, I'm just going to give you some examples of what's been accomplished in 29 treatment days so far. Not very long, but amazing in some respects as to what's been accomplished. So really, if you have a child that you know has anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, ARFID, fear of foods, you have the right to have, my son has something like this, but for a different reason. I think it's called a 503 plan. I may be getting the exact number wrong. But you have the right to go to the school and have a plan developed so that whatever is necessary for that child to feel comfortable, for the anxiety, the fear, whatever it is, not to impact the learning, and also not to keep the child starving, which impacts learning, you have the right to expect the school to assist you to the extent reasonably possible. So if, for example, in my day, if they knew that I couldn't eat peanut butter and jelly, but I would eat jelly, well, I had a right to have them give me a jelly sandwich. Or a sandwich with just butter. Now, it wasn't available in the 1960s and 70s. Today, that's a right. It is a legal right. So if you know of a child, or if it's your child or your grandchild, and you can't get a school to accommodate you, call a lawyer. Call me or call a lawyer. Because your rights are being violated and that child is being harmed, emotionally harmed in ways that might last an entire lifetime. It's no joke. Now, with the insurance issues that I am dealing with firsthand, and let me tell you, they messed with the wrong person. As I've told you, when I was there 7 days. I'd eat the grilled cheese sandwich. I ate the second grilled cheese sandwich with the other cheese. I had a couple fruits that I had never had before. And I forget the other big food that I had tried, but it doesn't really matter. That was all in 7 days. On the seventh day, no, God did not rest.
Oh, this sounds like biblical.
On the seventh day, what they had is what's called restaurant night. It's on Thursday nights at my place. Restaurant night is where they pick a menu, and everybody has to order from that menu. Doesn't matter what your eating disorder is. You face different fears. If somebody doesn't want to put calories in their body because it thinks they're going to make them fat, they have to order something and try to eat. Now, you have therapists there, you have dietitians there, you have people there trying to help you. But restaurant night strikes fear in my heart. Occurred again last night. Now, the very first restaurant night I had before I learned I had no coverage was something, you folks know what it means, I still don't understand it, where they put all the food in a bowl and mix it together. Bole or boy or whatever it's called, I don't know. And they gave me this menu, and I literally got sick to my stomach. And I couldn't even read half the menu because to me it was in a foreign language. And they said, well, all the food's mixed together. No, you can't do that. Ah. And I was told, well, your exposure is you don't have to eat it, you just have to sit with it. So you become familiar with it. It's an exposure. It's called exposure therapy. Depending upon how high of a fear food it is, sometimes you can't be expected to just take a bite. Sometimes you just have to be around it, smell it, look at it, touch it.
I was going to ask you about the smell aspect.
Yeah. Smell aspect's a big thing for most people.
It's got to be.
Big thing for me. So I had a therapist sit down with me and go through the menu. And I came up with some pieces of steak, which I had eaten steak. I don't love it, but I can eat it. On top of a bed of green beans, which I wasn't going to eat. And I got them to agree not to make me have a sauce. But it still looked disgusting to me.
So the steak was dry?
Well, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
It was just a steak. That's all the menu said.
Okay.
So it gets delivered, and one by one they call you up because they know different people have different reactions. They called me up. I opened up the top of the plastic thing. The smell hit me like a ton of bricks. It physically forced me back in my chair. I was disgusted. And they saw my reaction. And reassured me, you're not expected to eat it. We just want you to sit with it. And I had a safe food that I had brought for dinner, which I had been told to do. So I had my safe food. I had my meatball parm sandwich. And I had this bowl sitting next to me to the right. Now, because I had just had my grilled cheese sandwich the other day, I didn't want this next exposure to, in my mind, be a failure. To them, it was a success just having it next to me. But to me, I had to at least take a bite of something. And it took forever for me to fight with myself to try to find one of the little pieces of steak that might not be touching the green beans. I know how that sounds.
Wow.
But that's an eating disorder.
Okay.
I also didn't want anybody to see me. We're sitting at a table. I didn't even want the therapist to see me because I wasn't supposed to eat this, but I was trying on my own. I didn't want anybody to see me because God knows what's going to happen if I had to spit it out. So I timed the therapist going down to her bowl and how long it took her to come back up and scan the table. And I snuck a piece of steak when her eyes were down. I'm a smart lawyer.
Sounds like a kid.
And I chewed it, and I chewed it, and I chewed it, and I'm trying to get the taste. Didn't really love it, but I was able to eat the one piece of steak. So at the very end, my therapist is telling me what an amazing success that was, far beyond anything that was planned for me that night, and I get a tap on the shoulder. Doctor such and such would like to see you. All right, I figure it's my time to see the psychologist. I go in, they say, we just heard from your insurance company, you're not covered for this. We're going to appeal, but until that's resolved, you can't come back tomorrow. And not only was I shocked and was I angry, but I'm being told this just after I forced myself with the most disgusting exposure I had ever faced in my life and actually eaten a bite. It was devastating. So I wrote my 18-page letter the next day, and I started a war with the insurance company. And all the appeals were denied, and that's why I have an external appeal pending in Washington. But also, they told the center, like I said, resubmit as if this were a new application with all this new information that's been provided. And I got coverage. And now I've been getting decisions every week. At some point, they're going to say no. And once again, I'll have to go to war. Okay? And when that war finally ends, and my last day occurs at the center, whether because the insurance company prematurely terminates it, or the center says, hey, you're ready to be discharged and just do normal outpatient stuff, I am going to sue Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida. And I will be consulting with my own class action counsel. But I'm telling you, given the other 2 class actions in other states, it's happening. Because they messed with me, they messed with the wrong person, and whatever I can do in that regard for others, I'm going to do. Because I'm not hiding anymore in the shadows. This was something that's a secret. You're embarrassed, you're humiliated. When the insurance company turned me down, I got angry. And I outed myself on Facebook. And I've now been posting daily ARFID updates as to what I'm doing in treatment and what I'm trying and having trouble with or accomplishing. And there's a sense of freedom in doing that. But I decided to discuss it here today because whether it's with anything else and you have an insurance problem and it can't get resolved, there are lawyers, including myself and lots of others that may even specialize it, that fight insurance companies on coverage issues. So I would say to you seriously, don't let it end with the insurance company. If you really think you're entitled to coverage, you call a lawyer. That's the whole reason, we're here. And in my case, when it comes to the eating disorder, you call a lawyer when you don't think that you, your child, your grandkid is getting the care that you think they're entitled to. Because chances are they're entitled to it. Several years back, Congress passed the Mental Health Care Parity Act. Great sounding name. What's it mean? Well, you remember when your mental health visits were limited to 20 a year by your insurance company, or 26 a year? No more. Because mental health now is treated on parity, equally, with physical medical conditions. They don't say you can only break your arm 10 times a year. If you break your arm 12 times a year, they still got to treat you. They don't say you can only get a common cold 5 times. You get your 7th cold, they still treat you. Well, the Mental Health Care Parity Act is the same. It says that for mental health care conditions, the insurance coverage must be on par with what is covered for medical care. Now, if you have a horrible insurance policy and it really covers horribly on medical care, it's going to be equally horrible on mental health. If you have an insurance company that's wonderful, or policy, then it should be equally wonderful when it comes to mental health. And it's just one of the new statutes that you can sue under. Another, if you get insurance through your employer, is ERISA, the Employment Retired Income Security Act. If you're not being treated fairly, it's a violation of ERISA. And trust me, there's more, as I've learned as I've had to navigate this battle. I also learned there is a lobbying group called the National Eating Disorder Association. They have lots of interesting materials on their site neda.com or .org. I don't remember. But they got lots of interesting materials there to help you find a therapist, find an eating disorder center, learn about it, deal with it, and also deal with legal issues and coverage issues and insurance. There are companies that specialize in fighting the insurance companies on these issues, especially eating disorders. So, with 2 minutes left, what would I say to you? I guess on the legal side, I would say to you, don't ever, ever let the insurance company have the last word. They're not entitled to it. They're not entitled to make medical decisions on what treatment you can get. That really should be between you and your doctor. And so if you don't like their decision, fight it. Fight it with every appeal that's available to you. Fight it with appeals externally. And fight it, if necessary, with a lawsuit. But fight it. Because these things can have serious impacts for the rest of one person's life. They have with mine for over half a century. And I'm just now getting success, little success, at fighting it on my own. I don't have time to tell you about some of those. Maybe I will next week. But for now, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I hope it's warm here, sunny, that we can use my pool. Not all of us, but you can use your pool. And until next Friday, thanks for listening. I'm Stuart Address, and this is Ask a Lawyer. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Ask a Lawyer right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world on Google Home and Alexa.